Hello everyone and welcome back to Poetry Surprises. Today I want to talk about how you can be at your best. Now, we all have to, want to, need to and love to improve. But how? Well, advice comes in lorry loads, self-help books, 10 commandments, therapies, relaxation, yoga, so many things you can do to get better at life and what you love doing. So, how do you know when you're getting it right and when you're getting it wrong? Well, we've already addressed some issues regarding liberation in previous videos on our Poetry Surprises channel. We've looked at imagination, we've looked at how to deal with disapproval, we've looked at freeing yourself from attachment to your own creativity, and we've also looked at dumping the idea of selfhood so that we can become much more flexible, much less restrained by the tradition and stereotypes. However, as anybody who's interested in poetry will know, there are plenty of videos on YouTube which actually tell you what to do to write poetry, how to get better. And some of them, although very well-meaning and very helpful, to be quite honest, don't cut the mustard. And the reason being is because they give orders, and sometimes very, what I might say, are quite silly orders as well. Because, for example, one I was listening to the other day advised, as a commandment, don't use cliche. So, how do you know when you're not using a cliche? And isn't that something of a cliche? I don't know. But it doesn't seem very good advice, because if you know something's a cliche, you're not going to use it. And if you don't know it's a cliche, well, then it's going to creep in and you haven't noticed. And it's not until somebody else points it out that, oh, that's a cliche. And you think, oh my God, that's a cliche. Oh, mustn't use a cliche. And suddenly your self-confidence goes, your self-belief goes, and you think, I didn't notice it. What else am I missing? So it doesn't always work. Anyway, so I'd like to give you a few tips I think that could be really useful to enable you to improve, to get better. And in so doing, I'm going to go back in my own history just to recap for myself what I've done. One of the first things that I think was really, really useful, and it's something that also Douglas Lipton alluded to in the film I made on him, which was on Poetry Surprises but a little while ago, is that composing aloud is very, very helpful. As you write, you're inside your own head, you're constructing the meaning that you want to construct, but suddenly, if you read that poem aloud to yourself, it reveals so much about how it's going to work as a poem. And sometimes if you start stuttering or messing up lines, to be honest, you're actually revealing that you're getting the structure of the sentence wrong, or you don't really understand the meaning of it. And it shows you exactly where your poem is going. So, every so often, read your poem aloud to yourself. Nobody's looking, so nobody's going to think you're mad. Just read it aloud and you will hear where that poem's going and if it's going anywhere at all. The next stage, and this could be a really revealing one, is read the poem in front of other people aloud. Now, that is a challenge because a lot of people don't like performing in front of other people. But I can assure you that you've got this beautifully written poem, you've got it all worked out, and there's an audience in front of you. And suddenly you look at it and you think, oh my God, I don't like that line. You haven't noticed months and months of composition, living with it in your ivory tower, sitting on your desk, you admire it, you think it's a great poem, you can't wait to read it, and suddenly you're in front of people and you realize there are flaws. Now, don't get put off by that. Exactly the opposite. Get inspired by it. This is your chance to get better. So, take your poem away and improve that line. Cut it out for that performance if you don't like it. Circumnavigate it. Find a way of not delivering that line if you really, really don't like it and it's proving difficult. But improve the poem afterwards. I've actually been in front of an audience and got to a certain section and I can see a line coming and I'm thinking, oh my God, that's a terrible line. Why did I ever write that? How did that ever get in there? And I just rewrite it on the spot, improvise something. But a great revelation to freeing up your critical faculty is having an audience looking at you. Now, there is another one that's often advocated, and I'm not going to criticize it, but I am going to put a few caveats in there, which is go to a group and get group criticism. A poetry appreciation group, a writers group, or whatever. And yes, obviously, there is great value in that. But the value that's often most expressed is getting the opinions of others. And of course you need the opinions of others to come your way. However, a word of warning about that is that groups rapidly become set in their own psychodramas, and you will often get the emotionally supportive audience member, and you will always get the critical audience member. So the emotionally supportive says, I think it's so brave of you to reveal yourself in this way. And I thought that was beautifully expressed. And you think, oh, yeah, great. And then you get the critical one who says, I'm not sure about this line or that metaphor or this simile or this word choice. Now, all of these are probably valid points. But you do notice in the group dynamic, after a few weeks of meeting, there's the same people sort of saying the same things, behaving in the same way. And it can become a bit of a hermetically sealed kind of society of mutual support. And it is good, but then as soon as you come out of that and you have to read it in public, for example, suddenly, wham, a new set of weaknesses are exposed. So yes, use groups, but don't think that they're the be-all and end-all. Now, just as a sort of kind of self-confession here before I read the poem that I'm going to do today, of course, the whole of Poetry Surprises is exactly this process of self-revelation heading towards improvement for me. I'm reading poems, I'm having to expose them, get them out there to you, and in the process of reading them, I start thinking, oh, wait a minute, I don't like this bit, or that's weak. And you know, I've come up with certain sort of revelations of my own about my own work in the last few months doing Poetry Surprises. One, I use too many lists. For God's sake, why am I listing all these things in the poem? I mean, they're cumulative and they have an effect, and I probably fell in love with the idea about 20 years ago, and I've fallen back on this technique again and again and again, and sometimes it works, but actually I'm getting a bit bored with it now. So, you know, you can have this honesty with yourself once you're talking to somebody about your work. Now, what poem am I going to read today, therefore? Well, it's going to be one. There's probably going to be a list in it, isn't there? And what I want to do is read you a poem called The Spark. And I want to read this poem because it's a celebration of humans, our creativity, our energy, and our insistence on trying to get things right, even in the most difficult circumstances. So, this is from the Pumpkin Lanter, And this poem is called The Spark. We have mightier minds than we like to admit. Spinoza, grinding his lens, is no exception, and the view is spectacular. Where shall I focus? Whichever way, we soar on currents of luminous air. So let's hear it, let's sing it for us. All mothers are a miracle, mine for sure. Songstress of tears made light, denier of death, who, faced with death, made joy, like a witch weaving spells for her children, to keep them safe through long nights. The way she cleared my father's tokens with a singular religious simplicity, utterly new, born of nothing I knew in her soul, such beauty in the face of limitless dark. Meister Eckhart intoning God within reach, Newton tethering planets across a void, Bernstein bouncing on the podium, grunting, roaring out Mahler at 68, himself but beats away from a grave. Darkness is not pain, nor pranks of fools. Darkness is not absence of light, the frisson of photon with matter, but the sudden touch of your hand on cold stone. Donald, his poems radiant in pain, singing a surge of notes despite himself, like a bird out of control, praising sunlight. Pascal, young among imploding space. Klee, setting his jaw against illness. My aunt dancing tango with a failing heart. What is this blinding flash, this magnesium flare? Perhaps alone, a minaret chanting ululations of fire across bleak barrenness. See perfect solids in the Science Museum, dreams of reason, space made articulate, modelled in card, marked with magic names by men. Octahedron, icosahedron, cube. Only we could uncover these unlikelies, prove them in a nugget of ripe reason. And Harrison constructing clocks that work on waves, his flesh and bone in springs and cogs, leaping beyond the visionary even in order to keep order, proof of love, echo of the first calls, watching birth in a coiled spring, only to reap ingratitude and meanness. The miracle of numbers, Babbage's brass madness, the law of second differences realised in clicks, whirs, the unreal made real through devotion, whose progeny computers make nimble dances, launch interlopers to the stars, marry the merry minuscule to the majuscule galaxy. Who needs supernova when we've got us? The woman laughing loudly on the tube as she misses the seat to sit on the arm, and her kid waving, smiling like a frog at the office workers passing by, and yes, those serious suits and ties replying in smiles. Do not let our diffidence fool us. Dad could drop a building on a stamp, lose hundreds on horses, talk Plato nights. For us, there is no such word as can't. From the first voices chanting words to conjure rains, the line that links hand to eye to mind has danced among demigods, enjoying dancing like kids at a Saturday rave, or Mozart in a minuet, or Wittgenstein in reason. Nothing is vain, nothing in vain. Not the Jews who were herded to death, nor the damned who herded them, nor the lives lost in war, my fathers and my fathers' fathers, and the endless generations before that fought, it seems, for naught, nor the mistakes and hurts done each day to lovers, children, innocents, animals, nor the cries of fools, nor age's infirmity, nor the millions of eyes in search of work, the lonely wives and dirty kids, the battering, brawling marriages of hearts to helplessness, nor the squeal of the rabbit run down, nor the lingering pain and pathetic despair of death announced before its hour, nor the suffering of the bystander, witness in tears to the loved ones leaving, or accident of the Sarajevo sniper, nor my childlessness in the face of galaxies, superclusters, the diapason of time, nor my death dancing its square dance before me. We outreach it all with a spark of the mind, in the child's hand grasping at the sun, the fabulist telling tales, the pianist's neat printing of fingers across an arch of spacious harmony, by the measured murmur of quarks in every kiss, lip to lip, blown upon the wind to the dead. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed that long poem, but an accumulation of miracles. And with that, give your best, get better, give your best again and get better again. See you soon. Bye.